When Jesus showed up 2,000 years ago, he didn't talk about 10 commandments as much as he talked about 2. And he says, upon these 2 hang all the law. The 2 commandments are likened unto the 2 spies that came back with a good report. There was 10 that came out with a bunch of gripes. There was 2 came out with a bunch of grapes. You want grapes or gripes? 10 always says you can't. That's the law. You can't be good enough. He's not going to like you. God's not going to ever use you again. You're washed up. That's the law. Remember they sent 12 spies in? 10 came back with a bad report. 2 says we can take the land. Joshua and Caleb. Jesus and his dog. Actually.
Joshua means Jesus and
Caleb means dog. So that was the first K9 unit that went in and sniffed out land. They said we can take it. So when Jesus said this, since we're talking about hearing and seeing, let's see what he really. Let's hear what he said. Let's see what he said. He said, "Love the Lord thy God with all." Notice it's thy. He didn't say love thee, Lord thy God. It's your Lord God. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, and soul. Now, there's a lot in those 3, but I don't want to go there. But then he said, and love your neighbor as yourself. So our carnal mind would say, I don't like my neighbor too much. You know, they didn't want us to put a fence up, you know, and they didn't want to show us their survey. And that's the guy. I'm having a struggle loving my neighbor, you know, because they told me off to me. Maybe he wasn't talking about your neighbor. Huh? He said the first is likened unto the second. There's where we miss it. The first commandment is likened unto the second. What was he really saying? Who is your neighbor? We give God an address.
Sure.
Gail said something that God didn't show up till you brought him. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as you, maybe because it is you. What I hear Jesus saying there is the Spirit of the living God now dwells in people. He used to dwell in temples made with hands. He said, I'll no longer dwell in temples made with hands. So now he dwells in a people. He said, I'll tabernacle in my people. I'll put myself in them. I'll write my laws in their heart, mind, and soul. They won't have to teach every man saying, know me, for all will know me. Because his Spirit, God lives within. That's your neighbor that you love as you. Why would that be you? Because there's 2 of you. There's a natural man, and then there's a spirit man. And Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15, as we have borne the image of the natural, the earthly man, so shall we bear the image of the heavenly. The reason, if our friend just laid down in the grave and she's gone now, she'll never need that natural body again. And someone says, well, she gets to come out of the grave with the great resurrection. I said, the great resurrection already happened 2,000 years ago. When Jesus told Martha, I am the resurrection. She goes, I know my brother will rise again at the last day. He goes, well, you're talking to the last day. What are you talking about? The last day. You're talking to the first and the last. And everything in between. When you die, you will have a glorified body the second you die. That will be recognized in the other side, on the other side, which is heaven.
Unless you recognize it now.
Or,
seek glory, honor, and immortality.
Do we have to die to go to heaven? Pretty much the church, they had a real problem with the movie Heaven is Real because the little boy said, I went to heaven. And the guy's whole church out there in Nebraska said, well, did he die? He said, the pastor said, no, it's not medically recorded that he died. Well, then he couldn't have gone to heaven. All their doctrines started being dismantled and frayed and pulled apart, you know, because how did this little boy go to heaven if, medically speaking, when he was in the hospital, he did not die. The way they taught the Bible, you can't go to heaven unless you die. But he did. So, if I have to die to go to heaven, I already died.
He died at the cross.
Died at the cross. I died in him. Because it says he tasted death for every man. And people say to you, well, it says it's appointed unto man once to die. After this, the judgment. Yeah. I already had my death in him. It was appointed unto man once to die. There was only 2 men when Jesus showed up. Adam and last Adam. And he died. So guess what? You've already had a death exacted within you. So go to heaven. Hello? If you have to die to go, if that's your belief system, well, may I tell you, you've already died in him, so you can go into heaven now. I think Paul understood that because he said, we've been made to sit in heavenly places. He's talking to people that were alive, walking around. They could have said, Paul, you don't know the Bible. This guy wrote 14 letters of the New Testament. Of course he knows what he's talking about, I'm sure. But he said, he hath made us to sit in heavenly places, plural. Jesus said, I go to prepare a place. Now we're sitting in heavenly places. And he said, if you be risen with Christ, you can't rise unless you've had a death. You can't have a resurrection unless you had a death. So what was your death? You reckon your old man dead.
Wayne, did you have something?